Hello, this is DrPaulCottrell, and I'm recording on September 29th. We're going to go over what has been transpiring with the war between Israel and Hezbollah. Before I do that, please make sure you subscribe to all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. I have a recent strike on one of my YouTube channels, so episode 72, please make sure you watch it on Rumble, Brighteon, or Bitchute. It's dealing with the Taiwan Strait and the movement of military ships going through the Taiwan Strait by Japan and how that has upset the Chinese. That happened on September 24th, 2024, New York time. It happened early in the morning on September 25th in Asia time. And so in Taiwanese time. So that feeling that I had that something big was going to happen in September 24, 2024 did happen. All right, so please watch that video. It's a really important video, but it was taken down by YouTube. Now, with that said, also follow me on X and on GETTR. That way you get announcements. And please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Throughout this video, I'm going to be talking about what's in some of the anti-aging boxes, how to slow down the aging process, boost up your immune system, improve your skin health, and also your cardiovascular health and mental clarity, and all these things that are really important so you have more longevity. So with that said, I have the anti-aging beginners box, and that has the structural nano silver liquid. You just take a teaspoon of this a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle, 20 seconds or so, swallow. And what that will do is neutralize pathogens. It will maintain a mucosal barrier for your oral cavity and also improve your oral hygiene. In addition, you can pick either extra virgin olive oil, MCT coconut oil, or avocado oil, C60. C60 is a molecule, 60 carbon molecule that soaks up free radicals. It's very potent. Take a teaspoon of this a day. You can pick either, again, extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, or avocado oil for the 2 ounce for this anti-aging beginners box. And you also get D3. D3 is very important as a gene expression cofactor. So you have processes in your cell that are working properly. In addition, it helps to get a cell to go into apoptosis if it needs to. And D3 is important in absorbing calcium. So this is a multi-purpose vitamin that you should be taking every day. I take 2 soft gels each day. I take it 1 in the morning and 1 in the evening. So that's the beginner's box. You get the structural nano silver liquid, you get the D3, and you get the C60. So that's the anti-aging beginner's box. So with that said, let's start with Fox News. IDF confirms another top-ranking Hezbollah commander has been eliminated.
We're back with a Fox News alert. Overnight, the IDF confirming it has taken out another senior Hezbollah terrorist on the U.S. wanted list, seen as a likely successor to slain leader Hassan Nasrallah. So they took out Nasrallah, and then they took out the guy that replaced him right away. But as Israel continues to dismantle Iran-backed Hezbollah, Joe Biden still pushing for a truce.
The president is proud to encourage enemies of Lebanon and Congress expired.
Will you respond to the missile attacks on U.S. warships in the Red Sea?
We're responding.
Our next guest knows all about fighting against Islamists, and that's former U.S. Army Green Beret Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann joins us now. Colonel, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
It doesn't feel like those shouted answers inspire much confidence, and we're hearing reports that Israel didn't let the White House know previously about this strike because they were worried that the White House would say, don't do it.
Yeah, and if that is the case, I mean, that's extremely telling. It's like we need to step back and take a collective look in the mirror. If Israel withheld that information from us because they were afraid we would actually intervene with the attack, that's troubling.
But would it surprise you?
Right now, no. I mean, I think one of the things that I'm concerned about is it almost seems like since the fall of Kabul, we have really been challenged with how we show up as an ally against international terrorism. You know, the countries that we should be at their shoulder, and we've historically been at their shoulder, all of a sudden now we're not. And it's to the point that they don't even trust us enough as a partner to be at their shoulder in the moment of truth. So they just leave us out of the equation.
Exactly. So what do local, and you work so often with local allies, that's what you did as a Green Beret.
40 years
When
ago,
they sense that America is saying, hey, that's not our fight anymore, for whatever reason, what's their reaction?
Well, I mean, what you've seen here is where they'll just go it along.
I'm going to interrupt. I'm going to interrupt. All right. So basically, you know, obviously, Israel's knocking out command and control in Lebanon, probably to set up for a ground invasion. Okay, that's basic strategic war, right? But you also have to remember there is a very long arc of this problem in the northern front for Israel. And Israel's political establishment, going back decades, was warned about this situation and what to do, and they didn't do what they were warned to do decades ago. All right. And it was warned that certain things would happen in the future, which they have happened now, because they didn't do something in the 60s. All right. I'm going to play after this something that may upset you, but I don't really care. All right. But what the reality of the situation is that Israel was supposed to do something in the 60s. They were warned to do it. They didn't do it. And this is the reason why we have the problem that we have today. All right. The lesson learned is that Israel has to kill Hezbollah, Hamas, and the theocratic apparatus that's terrorist, the terrorist infrastructure and the theocratic leaders of Iran. All right. Or we're going to have much bigger problems later down the road. And the proof positive of what I'm saying needs to happen is what I'm going to be playing soon here. All right. But you can see Israel somewhat has trepidation, you know, during the early stages of October 7th, internal strife between the ultra liberals of Israel and the conservative or the more orthodox establishment in Israel. There's infighting within the cabinet. The ones that are more pro-war, the other ones are, you know, more complacent and more pacifist in the cabinet. You have the international community, especially the leadership in the United States, trying to tell Israel on how to conduct the war. And it was warned in the 1960s not to listen because something bad was going to happen. All right. Now, what I'm going to play is literally telling you what was going to happen that's happening now back in the 1960s. All right. But the reality of the situation is the United States slowballing this situation in the Middle East is going to make it much worse. Now, the difference in terms of energy consumption and in terms of energy production and resources and all that has shifted since the 1960s and the 70s. The United States can produce a lot of oil now. And back then, we were tied to the Middle East in terms of oil. So that dynamic has changed. Technology and warfare has changed. Surveillance of the enemy has changed than the 1960s and the 1970s. But if if the United States keeps on playing the same playbook that they used in the 60s and the 70s, this country, the United States, is going to be cursed.
For a ceasefire after the horrorism of October 7 and what they went through, I don't think that's what we would do, right? And so to expect them to do that is just, that's beyond the pale, and it's just not realistic. And whether you're working with a village in Afghanistan,
So why should Israel be told on how to conduct a war when they had their 9/11 on October 7th? The United States obviously wouldn't do that. We went even one step further. George Bush basically said, we're not going to make a distinction between terrorists and the ones that house terrorism. Well, that basically means that if the Palestinian people are hosting Hamas and not fighting Hamas, then the Palestinian people are Hamas. All right. Same thing with the Lebanese. The Lebanese, if they're hosting Hezbollah and they're not fighting Hezbollah, then they're Hezbollah. You know, it was simplistic from George Bush Jr., but it was effective. And that's the kind of mentality that we need in our government. Make it very simple, very deontological, very black and white.
and or you're working with an international partner that's a nation state, how you show up in the moment of truth determines how they show up for you. And that's what I'm most concerned about, because we're just as much in the crosshairs as Israel is.
Absolutely. Okay, you've been so good to us in this program for so long. I want to take a moment to promote your new book. It comes out on Tuesday.
Yeah.
It's called Nobody is Coming to Save You. Subtitle, A Green Beret's Guide to Getting Big Stuff Done. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I wrote as a young Green Beret, I learned early on, a lot of good senior sergeants taught me that, hey, in these rough, trust depleted places of churn in Afghanistan, nobody's coming to save you. Whatever you've got's what you've got. And the way that we survived and thrived was based on the relationships we built when trust was low. And it was old school interpersonal skills. And I think that's what we need in the country today. If you look at the country, no matter who wins the election, Pete, we're going to come out of this thing more divided than what we went in. And that really exposes us as a nation. And I think leaders are going to have to still connect with clients. They're still going to have those uncomfortable Thanksgiving conversations. And this book is the old school interpersonal skills that Green Berets and other special operators use in low trust environments to build rapport and build relationships.
Low trust environment is exactly what we're walking into. You mentioned it, and that was the page I was drawn to. The churn.
The churn.
Explain that real quick.
Yeah, I think we live in an unprecedented time of distraction, disengagement, and division in the country. It's just unprecedented. And we're practicing like a form of shadow tribalism with each other. And we're actually going against what this country was founded on. And if we don't figure this out pretty soon, I mean, it could end in societal collapse. The churn is the enemy. The Republican or the Democrat across from you, no matter how this election sorts out, that's not the enemy. The enemy is this unprecedented social condition that we're dealing with. And that book will help people navigate those conditions and make better connections.
I haven't read the book, nor will I. But the thing is that I'm gonna take it what he just said about the churn, all right, and this social unrest, and apply it metaphysically. All right, the Satan wants division with people. All right, and it uses. We make things, tools, communication tools like social media, to create division. On the surface, we thought it was just better communication, faster, and we'd be able to share, ideas and cross-pollinate, and the society would be freer and better. But there is an evilness in social media to allow for division. And it's what I call the infestation. He calls it the churn, right? But there's an infestation within social media, all right? And there is this conflict between people, liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, Jewish, Muslim, it doesn't matter. There are tools that society is developing to create division. And this is the source that the Satan feeds on to make sure that things are are slowed down to prevent a peaceful transition into the Messianic era. Satan dies during the Messianic era. Satan doesn't want to die. All right, so it's going to try to root into hate, root into division. All right, and social media is one of the reservoirs of this root system for Satan. All right, so just keep that in mind. Now, what I'm going to play here, now I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that don't care, that don't care, don't like what I'm going to do or what I don't care. I really don't care anymore. I got to the point in my life, I don't care. All right, but the thing is, it's proof positive that you got to stop kicking the can down the road and get the job done. Before we go there, though, I want to talk about the anti-aging advanced box. All right, so you get some more products with it. Now, in the advanced box, the anti-aging advanced box, you get the Max 35 instead. Same thing, you take a teaspoon of it a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle, 20 seconds swallow, neutralizes pathogens and maintains that mucosal barrier. You get the C60 in your choice of extra virgin olive oil, MCT coconut oil, or avocado oil in the 2 ounce. Take a teaspoon of it a day. It'll neutralize those free radicals. You get vitamin C. All right, this helps to boost up your immune system. You get the D3, which is helps to get cells to go into apoptosis, and it's a cofactor for gene expression. So it helps with absorption of calcium. Probiotic, which helps with the gut biome, very important for metabolism and energy and better mood and better communication with your liver. Helps to reduce inflammation in the gut. You get your choice of deodorant. And with the deodorant, you can get the peppermint lavender tea tree or the citrus. The deodorant is made from essential oils from the Himalayas, all natural, and it's a dual purpose product. It's a deodorant for males and females, and it also helps to detoxify your body. And the toothpaste, which is a structural nail silver toothpaste that whitens your teeth, freshens your breath, maintains that gum line, reduces that inflammation, improves your oral hygiene. And because of that, you're reducing the chances of cardiovascular disease and valvular disease, right? So take this toothpaste, it has no fluoride in it. It's a very, very high quality toothpaste. So that's what's in the advanced box. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the anti-aging boxes that I'll be going through this whole video. The one I just talked about was the anti-aging advanced box. Now, it's really important to understand the periods of time. All right, this is why you come to my channel, because I'm going to give you an unvarnished view of world events and how you can apply it to your life. All right. There is a larger arc of activity that's taking place. There's this, level of escalation of conflict in the Middle East, which is a smaller fib sequence. And then there is this fib sequence, which is more decade related, or what you could say is that there's a short fib sequence from the current conflict, a little bit larger fib sequence tied to 2006 Lebanon war with Israel. Then there's the Yom Kippur War sequence. There's the 1960s. And then a much, much larger one going all the way back to biblical times. So you have these different arcs, or another way to look at it is as you spiral, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. The smaller spiral is the current activity. The larger arc of the fib sequence is the biblical arc. So that's another way to look at it. There's a lot of different ways to look at it from a fractal point of view. But the point here is that it's a fractal. And there are these points in time that if you don't do something, that it's going to make it worse later down the road. And this is what I use the term kick the can down the road. And we need to get the job done. All right. Now, what I'm going to play here, some of it is it's going to push buttons, but I really don't care. All right. So, but the thing is that you can learn something from this. You can there's what is happening in that region is trying to rectify the warning that no one paid attention to back in the day when this was happening in the 60s and the 70s. All right. So there's a lot of wisdom in this video, but because of people's proclivities with religion, you're going to tune out. Try to be as open-minded as you can. All right. All right. Because what's going to be said is going to radically change the lens of what is going on in that region and why it's where it's at now.
Zero Ep 1984. I was a child of 10 years old, and I was sitting on the floor near the Rebbe's stage
Let me read
as
this. I
Bibi
gotta
Netanyahu.
rewind this.
40 years ago, on Simchat Torah of 1984, I was a child of 10 years old, and I was sitting on the floor near the Rebbe's stage as Bibi Netanyahu, the then UN ambassador, came with some other Israeli dignitaries. The Rebbe spoke to them for 45 minutes. So I have to tell you, as a child sitting on the floor with thousands of other people crammed into the synagogue at 770, it felt like they were talking for hours. Today, I'd like to touch on 3 points from the Rebbe related to what's been going on in the north. It's actually very tempting to try and share 20 points, but we'll stick to 3 for today, God willing. Both Prime Minister Netanyahu and Alan Baker told us about that conversation in Jem's My Encounter with the Rebbe project, and part of it feels especially relevant today.
I said, Rebbe, I would like to, I came to see you. And he looked aside and he said, just to see, not to talk. And so we started talking, and we had a 45-minute conversation. And the people who were waiting were very, very impatient, to put it mildly, but it was a wonderful conversation. Well, he said, you're going to this house of darkness, the UN, which was very, very unfriendly to
Now,
Israel.
you got to understand, he was almost a nobody in 1984, going to the UN as a dignitary. The thing is that some people can look at someone and see their future. It's a few people that can do this, all right? Especially repeatedly. Some people can do it, maybe once or twice in their life, but repeatedly, almost like, every day and anyone they see. So it takes a very special person to be able to do this, a very intelligent, high level of intelligence to do this, all right? And the Rebbe saw his future while he was talking to him. Now, you'll explain why now you got to remember, this is all happening in 84. All right, there's other things in this video that'll go back even farther, but this is another arc of that fib sequence. But it's really important to pay attention to this point here, okay?
They said even in the greatest darkness, if you light a candle, it spreads a great light that can be seen from afar. And of course, he said to remember what I represent, who I represent, to stand firmly and proudly for Israel and the Jewish people.
The discussion was between the Rebbe, Netanyahu, and myself. At that time, Prime Minister Shamir was involved in negotiations to withdraw Israeli forces from Lebanon. The question was whether Israel would withdraw or not. And here, and it was still open. Ultimately, Israel withdrew, but the Rebbe was very insistent that Israel shouldn't withdraw. In fact, he said several times, Yad Chazakah was Netuya. We should go forward. And this is a message that we should bring to Shamir. And he stressed this repeatedly as something very important. He says, look, you shouldn't withdraw. You went into Lebanon in self-defense. because there was terrorism emanating from Lebanese territory, and you're also in a state of hostility with Syria, and if need be, if you have to continue going forward, even into Syrian territory, then you should do it. And Israel should do it. It's Israel's right. You're protecting Eretz Israel, you're protecting Jews, Israelis, and it's very important.
Who knew how relevant this advice would be all these years later? Now, an obvious thing we can all say is, oh, if only we listened, if only. But the more important point is, today, do what you need to do with full force. Unless we stop making the same mistakes, history will, God forbid, repeat itself again. The next lesson comes from the beginning of Mivtza Litani. It was a 1978 operation to bring security to Israel's northern border. After a particularly horrific terrorist attack when the PLO commandeered a bus and massacred 30 of the passengers, on top of regularly launching rockets and artillery strikes into northern Israel, the IDF moved into Lebanon very quickly and very successfully, established a buffer zone to prevent further attacks. On Purim of that year, March 23rd, 1978, 8 days after the start of the operation, the Rebbe praised the way the action began, but urged Israel's government to continue doing whatever it takes to consolidate their gains and continue to assure security.
Man hat nicht gemacht in Sitzungen, man hat nicht gemacht in der jüdischen Komitetten, man hat nicht gemacht in Kriere, Schöne, Schnee und
I'll
Schnee.
read this after
Man
this.
hat die, was einen Munche behindern sehr, wie man darf sich finden, in Sofi von Eretz Yisrael. Und von dort die Smichus mit Zfemersche Eretz Yisrael, und man hat das machlich gewesen und auch getan, und kein Pissum und prägend Teich. Bei 120, was sie nicht in See gefunden, sich echt plötzlich und schlommig. Und nege die, was finden sich wie eine Sozialpunkt und Zoffen. Von Moskau, wie kann ich übersehen, und mit machlich gewesen, und die Frage nach ein bisschen die Kassaline von Pikuach Nefesh, und mit das gleich auch getan, und es hat Matzlier gewesen, als Titel allein in Moskau Pacha. Mit der alle Zeus, was ich davon gewählt, und so sich alles gewiesen, dass der Weg auf vermeiden Milchommes, wenn die Doktor schon nicht begollen, ja, dass der Weg, dass sie nicht vermeiden, auf weiter und nicht vermieten die Milchommes, was man zum Weniger hat, Pläne zu heranmischen, und der zu heranmischen, hat gesehen, Beshiva Drochim Yonusel Konecho, und so sich auch getan der Linie bis man kurze Delisse und allweit der Mamsche sein besehen an Leten und on Pissen, aber bejachat im See meiste der Teil bis dieses Achig Dela und der Ihnen die Schleimusse nicht gehen als der
I know that you don't speak Yiddish and all that, so I'll read this. But the thing is that the Rebbe did meet Einstein, and Einstein said that the Rebbe was smarter than him. Right? This guy is extremely highly intelligent. Like, no matter, like, there's some PhDs that watch this show. All right, you pick that most intelligent person that you know, and they're not as intelligent as this guy. All right. Now, you may say, well, you sound biased and blah, blah, blah. I'm telling you, this guy was super intelligent. And not only that, not only did he have super intelligence, you could see what was going to transpire with something. You know, I don't have the time to explain it. He could even see the year that you're going to die. But let's keep on going. But he's warning people what to do. All right, and I'll read it. I'll read it. He's almost done with his speech here.
Und danach schicken Schluchen bechol Oilem Kule. Was sagt der, was ist in Derby in Washington, und was sagt der, was ist in Moskau, und der, was ist in London, und der, was ist in Paris. Der kann jetzt übersetzt, 10 Läden gehen, als Schenitze nicht. Und auch gegolten, Almost a sneak me yasher given mit ma jener a bridge. A ro bruder a ro was mat sich bezeigt die Muroi. Die gesagt früher war 3 Mal noch ein Mann dort noch getan im selben Zeug. Und es hat gekostet Hunderte, was man dann Plan tägliche. Korbone Roye Messien so das Rachmochat schon. Überhaben denselben Zeug noch einmal. Und die hier Rotsnamen soll nicht voll werden. Weil die Jiden, was sie sagen, mit Jode, der Racha, mit Wohne, Tatsides, Schenis und Mischunis, Tatsibel, in Kavanossen, mit Zuyo. Und soll rechnen, Schuchen, Norach, Erach, Chai. Und guckt und dort den Dien.
If you want
Okay,
the victory to last, you
All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna read this to you. All right. They didn't hold big meetings. They didn't form committees. They bring the plans to a first, second, and third reading. Instead, they let me. I'm skipping stuff. Hold on. It's hard to scrub this here. Okay. They didn't hold big meetings. He's talking about the UN here. All right. They didn't form big committees. They bring the plans to a first, second, and third reading. Not so easy to get this scrubbing here. Come on. Come on, wait. Instead, they left it to the military experts who know how to operate in northern Israel and the territories past the Israelis' northern border. And without seeking the opinions, this is the important point, and without seeking the opinions of 120 members of Knesset, amongst whom are non-Jews, Christians, and Muslims, especially with the knowledge that lives are at stake. And they acted immediately. They saw the fulfillment of fear and panic shall fall upon them. And all the successes that followed. It demonstrated that this is the way to prevent wars. Now it's being declared that this will be a deterrent moving forward. There was a fear that this or the other would get involved. Rather, they fled from you in 7 directions. Right? There's the 7-front war. And it was all achieved in a very short time. Let's hope they will continue in this way. Let's hope they will continue in this way. But at the same time, swiftly taking most decisive action. And then send diplomats all around the world. The person sitting in Moscow the person sitting in London and the one sitting in Paris, etc. Whether they may take another step forward or not. They succeeded in not consulting public opinion. A lesson that has been learned by actual events over time. 3 times in a row, they made the same mistake. And it cost hundreds, and may God have mercy, thousands of lives. May it never happen again. Wait. Heaven forbid to repeat the same mistake yet again. And you cannot be deterred by those Jews who are fearful or faint-hearted. This is talking about that inner fighting within the country. It's hard to scrub this. Whatever their reasons are, even if their intentions are good, open the code of the Jewish law, and you will see the explicit ruling. Okay. So the point that I'm making here is that through his speech, he was warning, don't pay attention to the outer community that's telling you not to do something when you know that it will be more lasting, even though it may be a scary situation to get into. Not to be, don't have trepidation, don't be fearful. And internally, you're going to have people within your country that are going to be so fearful of the operation that they're going to try to prevent you from doing it. But what happens is that it's kicking the can down the road, and the destruction is so much more later in the future, all right, because of technology, because of population densities, and other geopolitical variables that start to emerge. And that the international community is always going to try to hamstring or slow down those military operations for their own benefit, not for your benefit, not for the country's benefit, not for the Israeli people benefit, or the Jewish people. It's always in the benefit of the country that is their country being represented in the UN. Let's say in this case, the United States. They don't really care about Israel. These people that think that the United States really cares about Israel, no, it doesn't. It views it as a front door to the Middle East for foreign policy, but it doesn't really care about Israel. So, okay, so he was warning, don't pay attention to the international community to prevent you from getting the job done. And that is exactly what happened in 2006. That is exactly what happened in 2009. That is exactly what happened in 2016. That is exactly what happened now. All right, just imagine if Washington wasn't slowing down the operations of Israel in Gaza, how fast it would have gone. It would have gone much faster and most likely less casualties. But the United States was worried. And the same thing, the whole international community. You can just look before Israel started knocking out the main leaders of Hezbollah, how the international community kept on saying, oh, this is going to be really, really bad. This is going to be really, really bad. But the Rebbe is basically saying, you know what? Sometimes you need to move forward, don't be fearful, and just get the job done. And don't care about what other people are saying. Because what other people are saying is actually kicking the can down the road and making it worse for everybody. Not just for the Jewish people, not just for the Islamic community around Israel, but the whole world at large. They think that by saying ceasefire and peace and withdrawal is better for the world. And the reality of the situation is you got to get the cancer out. If you don't get the cancer out, it metastasizes. So because they didn't get the cancer out in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, in the 2000s, in the 2010s, in the 2020s, because they didn't get the cancer out, it has metastasized.
Last, you must ignore outside pressures. Do what needs to be done to assure security. If you're going to wait for the world's approval, forget about it. Now, hopefully that's what we've been doing this week. But after you secure things, by going in on the ground or whatever the true security experts determine is needed, you need to be comfortable to keep ignoring those who will be screaming politely but firmly, do what you need to do.
Right.
The criticism and the pressure will come. It has come every single time in the past, and that's exactly where Israel has subsequently turned a win into a loss, including, unfortunately, in the very place that Rebbe was warning them in that talk in Lebanon. By the way, here's a clip we found of General Avigdor Ben-Gal, an absolute hero from his actions during the Yom Kippur War, who was later the commander of the Northern Command. He devised and oversaw Mivtza Litani.
I fought the Syrians in the Golan Heights. What success in protecting the entire land of Israel, as well as protecting the Jewish spiritual integrity. Thank you very much. Much success. And I had the Rebbe's blessing. Get $1 in charity here in the other states.
Now, there's a third very important point of the Rebbe that comes to mind today. Close your eyes and jump back only a couple of weeks. What were we going to do with Lebanon? Hezbollah, 150,000 short-range, medium-range, long-range, precision-guided missiles. The situation seemed impossible. It was impossible.
Right.
What in the world?
And this is where Scott Ritter gets it all wrong. All right. Because he's only thinking of it in this plane and, some sort of, because all these experts out there were saying Israel's going to get decimated. Look at what happened in 2006 and all this stuff. Well, things have changed on the battlefield. One, October 7th is a big catalyst. Two, all right, there is this this flux because of the ultra liberal and the conservative or the orthodox in Israel is creating a charged effect. There's all this conservatism and ultra liberalism charge in the world at large. There's this push by the Saudis to try to, stabilize the regions for economic growth, through the Abrahamic Accord agreement. There's drone warfare that changes the dynamic of the battlefield that wasn't there in 2006. And you have the red heifer. They didn't have the red heifer in 2006. They have the red heifer now. A lot of things have changed. Iran, much closer to a nuclear weapon now than they were in 2006. So to say, well, this is what happened in 2006, so it must happen in 2024. I think Scott Ritter isn't getting it right. He's not getting it right. How? Sometimes you can't apply the same situation in one epoch and say that it's going to be matching in another epoch. Variables have changed. Not only that, you may have actually a government that's basically saying, you know what, I don't care what the international community is thinking. We're going to do and get the job done. All right. They didn't have that in 2006 because you had the international community put so much pressure on Israel. Plus, what was going on in 2006? That was during George Bush. And we had the fiasco that was going on between Iraq and Afghanistan. Totally different dynamic than we have today. So there's a fallacy that epoch comparison fallacy that Ritter is getting wrong here. Now, as long as Netanyahu keeps on moving forward and not being fearful of this internal strife with the ultra-liberal within the country and the international community strife, Israel will get the job done. Because you should roll back YouTube, all right, to just 3 weeks ago. And a lot of people, like Scott Ritter, was saying Hezbollah is going to decimate Israel. Israel just took out most of their command and control by blowing up their walkie-talkies and pagers. Now, of course, humans had to, find ways to get that done. But God allowed it to happen because the Jewish people weren't fearful in that moment in time. This is the Ritter mistake. If you're not fearful, sometimes you can get something done. There's kind of like a divine kind of thing that is happening that allows it to take place.
Now, if you've already forgotten the mind space we were in, Google it. The CEO of Israel's electric company said Israel's entire north will be uninhabitable. The power was going to collapse. Major damage to Israel's highways. People were going to be in their shelters for days on end, God forbid. The carnage from the salvos of thousands of well-aimed rockets was going to be massive. And look where we are today. To me, it seems there are some parallels here to the summer of 1967. It was only 20 years or so after the Holocaust. The Jews were about to be annihilated, and there was no way around the outcome of utter devastation. And then, as the Rebbe described, in one day, everything turned around with Mivtza Moked, the IAF's attack on Egypt's Air Force, and eventually the Syrian and Jordanian Air Forces followed that, and that launched the Six-Day War, which Israel won resoundingly.
Before the Six-Day War, everyone declared that we must recite Psalms without any exception. Even the most non-observant Jews. Some recited a single verse, or they cried out the Shema. Clearly, people saw it as a time of perilous danger. God save us. Once the 6 days had passed, and the days that followed those, by the way, I declared that the true danger was beginning then. Although the obvious danger had passed, by the grace of God and through his miracles, etc., we must be careful not to declare my own strength and the power of my hand. Right afterwards, everyone proclaimed that it was God's will. Only later were the results attributed to military power. They want to publicize promoting the notion that human efforts alone achieve this. Torah teaches that at creation, God left the north side unfinished. God said, fine, let's see how you manage on your own. They haven't prevented, but the attacks, it was going too fast, hold on. Promoting the notion that human efforts alone achieve this. Torah teaches that the creation, God left the north side unfinished. God says, fine, let's see how you manage on your own. They haven't prevented, but the attacks have dragged on. With God's kindness, he is still waiting for us to recognize. This is what is doing from beginning to end, which in turn leads one to recite a psalm and to translate it into action. And then the one who manages all creation, the Almighty, will handle the north side as well. But he gives us free choice for Jews of their own free will to turn to him. You cannot conceive yourself that this is far off Israel.
ואני
That
הפנמתי,
is
הצלתי
distance,
דבר דיין
because
למדתי,
there's an
זאת
ocean.
העניין וכל כל הרבים זה בזה.
Sometimes he goes too
ובשעה
fast.
זה
Turn to him.
ודאס
You
ניט
cannot
אַקאַט וואס מיר קומען
convince
דאָ
yourself that
איילן,
this is
נאָ
far
דאָס
off.
איז אַ ליניע וואס מיר גייען וועלן יא. ואני
That
הפנמתי,
is
הצלתי
distance,
דבר דיין
because
למדתי,
there is an
זאת
ocean.
העניין
We are taught that every Jew is responsible for one another.
Und die Schar sehen, nie sagt man, die
When
Plan
one Jew,
steht,
heaven forbid, is in real danger,
wo wir nicht gefunden,
wherever they are, it affects the life and the existence
von jeder
of every other
riesigen
Jew,
Sachen, was wir
anywhere
dort
in the world.
nicht gefunden.
As this relates to today, while we're not out of the woods yet, it seems obvious that Israel's intelligence services, the Air Force, IDF, have done astounding work, and we've dodged a massive bullet. But if we want to learn from history, there's something we need to be very careful with here. On dozens, if not hundreds of occasions, the Rebbe begged Israel's leaders to stay away from hubris, not to swagger, and to remain humble. Hopefully, but now we've learned that lesson.
And that's very important, because that hubris showed up when the Berlin Wall fell, and the United States military thought that they were, because of the unipower, that they could do whatever they wanted. The hubris of the success in the Operation Desert Storm, and the hubris that took place then, the hubris of building up NATO and moving it more to the east and putting more pressure on Russia. This hubris that is being warned on to not to be hubris for Israel for military operations, successful operations, and to make sure that you see it, that this is God's allowing this to happen. This is something that the United States failed to realize during the fall of the Berlin Wall, during the Iraq War, Desert Storm, and during this whole movement of NATO towards Russia, because that hubris has now caused the conflict that we have in Ukraine and in Russia. That hubris led to us not winning post 9/11 in Iraq and Afghanistan. All right, so now do you understand why it's so important to listen, to pay attention? That these things, these events that have been taking place have been building up. They're connected. They're building up to a much larger event. And that's why I've been so focused. I've been telling everybody what's going on in Europe, what's going on in the Middle East, and what's starting to emerge in Asia are all tied together to 9/11 and to the crisis that we were in 2020. All right. But they also have nodal points to events that took place pre 9/11 because of the hubris and because of the international community talking and think that peace agreements literally will give you peace. Well, a lot of times peace agreements actually create more war. Let's take a look at the peace agreements that transpired right after World War I, that actually led to World War II. It's the same problem. The hubris of the Allied forces winning in World War I put so much reparations onto Germany, it led them down a path to reemerge as a major power and to start World War II. Peace agreements, ceasefires, and all that didn't get the job done. When there's a cancer, you got to get the cancer out.
Hubris and too much pride can lead us, God forbid. So the beepers, the meticulous mapping of every missile launcher in Lebanon, the incredible intelligence on the leaders of Hezbollah, and of course, all of the people who are endangering, in way too many cases, sacrificing their lives to provide security and peace. They're real, they're true, they're necessary, and we owe every one of them a massive thank you. But it's important to understand how this has worked repeatedly over the past 75 years. When we do what Torah directs us to do to protect life and limb, we achieve miraculous outcomes. So develop the most brilliant tactics and impeccable intelligence capabilities, enlist the finest people, the sharpest minds. And then when we do our utmost, he crowns our work with miraculous results. May these miracles keep on coming.
And it's not just the Jewish people. My country, the United States of America, all right, have made mistakes where the hubris has made things worse down the road. And we need to stop being afraid. Now, in contemporary terms, the United States is afraid to get the job done with the fucking Iranians. The Ayatollah needs to be assassinated. The capability of nuclear weapon development in Iran needs to be completely and utterly demolished. And stop being afraid, because what's going to happen is that there's going to be a radiological event because we were afraid. Now, I come from a background where you don't be afraid. Just get the job done. It's unbelievable, really unbelievable. So we can take lessons learned on how our government is fucking everything up in the Middle East because of the hubris and being afraid at times, especially when it comes to Iran. You know, we have hubris to grow NATO to try to knock out Russia, but we can't get the job done in Iraq and Afghanistan post 9/11. With that said, I'm going to start talking about the anti-deluxe box, the anti-aging deluxe box. So in the anti-aging deluxe box, you get the Max 35, you get the vitamin C, boost up your immune system. You get the D3, gene expression cofactor. You get the C60, your choice of extra virgin olive oil, MCT coconut oil, or avocado oil. Take a teaspoon a day. You get the probiotic. You get the deodorant, either in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, or in citrus. You get the resveratrol, which helps to get rid of senescent cells. It's an antioxidant, and it'll help to rejuvenate certain tissues in your body. So it's part of the anti-aging protocol. And of course, the great toothpaste that I offer. That is the anti-aging deluxe box. Now, what I want to do is I want to go and see what Kirby, the one that's afraid to get things done, has to say on CNN that wants nothing but ceasefire.
They will try to recover. We're watching to see what they do to try to fill this destabilizing news from the Middle East, where the Lebanon.
And it's amazing with CNN, right? Why is this recycling? Come on. All right. What's amazing with Jake Tapper, during the revolution, his family was in the United States. So, he has a decent lineage. So I have a decent lineage too. That goes back that far. Actually, it goes back farther, but either way. But my lineage was on the right side. And that was fighting with George Washington. His family was fighting for the King of England. Shit. So you really think that he comes from a soul root that is really about pro-America? He's really about freedom for people, really about constitutional rights? No. His soul root comes right from, the aristocracy, or it wasn't even the aristocracy, it was the monarchy. Hey, dumbass. Oh, by the way, he went to Dartmouth.
Profoundly destabilizing news from the Middle East, where the Lebanese have just recovered the body of Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Iran-backed Hezbollah. which the US government considers a terrorist group, who was killed by an Israeli strike on Friday. President Biden said the killing gave Nasrallah's victims and their families a, quote, measure of justice. But as Israel struck more Hezbollah targets overnight, President Biden also called for a ceasefire in the region, as US officials watched carefully for Iran's threatened retaliation for Nasrallah's death and the possibility that Israel could move ground forces into Lebanon. Joining me now to discuss White House National Security's communications advisor, Admiral John Kirby. Admiral, thanks for joining us. So, first of all, is President Biden glad that Israel took this action?
I don't think anybody's mourning the loss of Mr. Nasrallah, a known terrorist, a guy with American blood on his hands as well as Israeli blood on his hands. This is a terrorist organization. He was the leader of it. And I think people are safer without him walking around. But they'll try to recover. We're watching to see what they do to try to fill this leadership vacuum. It's going to be tough, but much of their command structure has now been wiped out.
Yeah. So, but you know what? It was the Israelis basically saying, you know what? We're not going to listen to the international community nor the United States, and we're going to get the job done. And we're going to cut off the command and control of Hezbollah and most likely do a ground invasion, while the United States was saying, give peace a chance. Do a ceasefire. Let Hezbollah reconstitute. I'm telling you, what the Rebbe said, and was warning, what the Rebbe was saying and warning is playing out right now. It's happening right now. And that warning was going back in the 60s, the 70s, 84. I'm telling you. And then now Kirby kind of like goes, you know, Israel did a good thing. Wow, that was a great idea. Even though 2 or 3 weeks ago, we told them not to do anything. Thanks, Kirby. Fucking idiot.
Several large buildings in the heart of densely populated Beirut, the suburb of Beirut. Do you have any indication at all what the civilian death toll might be?
I don't think we have an exact number, Jake. What we certainly assume, in fact, we can go so far as to say we know that there are civilian casualties here. There's no question about it.
I mean, dozens, hundreds, thousands?
I don't think we can quantify it right now. We're in touch with our Israeli counterparts about that. Each single civilian death is a tragedy. And certainly, while, again, nobody's mourning Israel's death, we certainly do mourn any loss of civilian life.
So before President Obama gave the order for SEAL Team 6 to go in and take out bin Laden, there was talk of an airstrike against the compound, and the decision was made to not do so, A, because they weren't sure about the intelligence, and B, because they were worried about, Obama was worried about civilian casualties. The Israelis went a different direction. Obviously, their intelligence was solid.
No shit,
do you think
Sherlock.
Israel made the right decision doing it the way they did it?
Again, I think having decimated the command structure.
This is what Satan wants. This is what Satan wants. We have this social media. I have a video about this. I'm going on a tangent now. I have a video about how the internet is this additional entanglement in a virtual world. All right, that is emblematic of the entanglement of Adam and Eve leaving the Garden of Eden and going into, being expelled out of the Garden of Eden, and this entanglement of good and evil. All right, good and evil they didn't really manifest and get entangled until after the original sin. All right, and this expulsion of Adam and Eve. Right, and so everyone in the world, by trying to make the world a better place and to do good and to help people and in various ways, but is trying to disentangle this thing over many, many, many years. All right, thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Right. So for Jews, doing mitzvahs will help to untangle this good and evil entanglement. Well, social media and internet and the wires for the servers and all this is an additional entanglement that Satan uses to stay relevant. Remember, as we move towards the Messianic era, Satan dies. So it's trying to latch on and keep energy flow so it doesn't die. All right. So it's Jake, he's creating a conversation that, well, there was civilians that died. So Satan is a smart guy, so, not a guy, but I mean a force. It's an intelligent force. All right, it's not good, it's negative, but it's intelligent. All right, far more intelligent than you and I. All right, and it knows how to trick. So to keep the entanglement of good and evil, to allow for Satan to have an energy force, it has to use media and entanglement, another layer of entanglement that has emerged because of technology, to convince you that any casualty, civilian casualty, any collateral damage is wrong, and that should prevent you from getting the job done. Not realizing that by not getting the job done, there's going to be more casualty and destruction down the road. Every single data point shows that. All right. The more you kick the can down the road in this region, the more death and destruction there is, and more costly. So Satan is trying to keep that good and evil entangled through the mouth of Jake Tapper on CNN, trying to get you to think all civilian, the civilian casualties, they happened, and because of that, then it should be just surgical. Well, Satan's smart. If you do surgical operations only, you most likely won't win wars. The United States has invested a lot in SEAL teams. Well, since we've been investing so much in SEAL teams, have we won a war? The answer is no. We haven't won a war since we've invested so much in SEAL teams, in special operations, and surgical. Because Satan knows that it's through massive destruction and collateral damage that ends wars. That's surgical. I know you won't agree with me, but that's how this is working. Satan is using CNN, not just CNN. He also uses Fox. Maybe it's a she, I don't know. But the thing is that this energy force, this negative force, Satan, is trying to convince people to keep the entanglement. Keep that entanglement of good and evil, so he still has an energy force. The moment it's disentangled, he dies.
His advantage, it's actually good for the region, good for the world. I'll let the Israelis speak to the decision-making process they made, why they chose to go this route.
Maybe they should have been
We
on October 7th too.
To the Israelis about what the right next steps are. And as you rightly said in the opening, the president continues to believe that there needs to be time and space for diplomacy. And that means we'd like to see a ceasefire in place so that diplomacy can breathe.
Iran condemned the killing of Nasrallah and said the U.S. is, quote, complicit in Israel's actions. How concerned is President Biden about the potential for a direct conflict, a direct military conflict between Israel and Iran, and maybe even involving the United States? Iran certainly has tried any number of things, including recently hacking President Trump's campaign, talking about an assassination attempt on President Trump. How concerned is President Biden about a possible direct confrontation between the U.S. and Iran?
We've been concerned almost since the beginning of this conflict about it.
If I was Kirby, I would say we're aware of the situation, but we're not afraid, and we're going to get the job done. Oh, let's see what he says.
War. That's why, again, the president and the G7 leaders just a few days ago talked about calling for a 21-day ceasefire. And everything else that the president's been doing, including adding force capability, military.
What
force
did the Rebbe warn about? He was talking about a 7-front war and nations just talking and talking and talking and talking at the UN and getting nothing done.
Is designed to prevent that exact outcome. Now we'll watch and see. We've seen the rhetoric coming out of Tehran. We'll watch and see what they do. We certainly will make sure that we have the capability to not only defend our troops and our facilities, diplomats and military, as well as Israel itself, if it comes to that.
It's really simple, Jake. All you got to ask is how far along are they from reaching a nuclear weapon in Iran? Are they days away, weeks away, months away? Either case is grounds for the United States to decapitate the Ayatollah and to destroy the capability, their nuclear capability. End of story. No, let's have a ceasefire and let them to go nuclear, and then the dynamics change radically. See, this is weak leadership. And this is exactly what the Rebbe was warning everybody about. Not to do this in Israel and not to do this in the United States. Don't be afraid. Get the job done. Get the intelligence. How accurate is the intelligence? And eliminate the enemy. Don't kick the can down the road. Because I'm telling you, if we do this, it's going to be a lot worse. Can you imagine Iran goes nuclear, changes the dynamic in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia is going to have to go nuclear. There's going to be more conflict there in the Middle East, and then all of a sudden, President Xi says, I think I'd like to have Taiwan now. And what the fuck is the United States going to do then? Because of failed leadership by Kirby.
The other day, you said that he didn't know of any incident in recent history where escalation led to de-escalation, and that is obviously a concern when it comes to these big strikes by Israel, no matter how abhorrent.
The Rebbe basically said, you escalate and you get the job done, and then what will happen is peace will ensue. We totally destroyed Germany in World War II. What happened? They capitulated. They ended the war.
The targets, if there are civilians that are taken out in the process, do you agree that escalation seldom leads to de-escalation, as the State Department spokesman said?
No, I think what we would agree on is that there needs to be an effort to de-escalate here. Again, Israel has a right to defend itself.
It needs to get the job done, and then it can have peace.
Was a lethal threat to the Israeli people. They want to get their families back to those homes and kibbutzes in the north. We want to see that too. We believe and continue to believe that an all-out war with Hezbollah, certainly with Iran, is not the way to do that. If you want to get those folks back home safely and sustainably, we believe that a diplomatic path is the right course.
The Biden administration, quite frankly, seemed caught off guard by the strike. We were told that the president didn't find out about it until planes were already in the air. When the Secretary of Defense landed at Andrews, he seemed to distance himself from the strike. He said the U.S. was not involved in the operation. And before that, the U.S. thought that there had been buy-in from Prime Minister Netanyahu as to a ceasefire with Hezbollah, but then ultimately he was not on board. How strained are relations between President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu?
These are two guys that have known each other for 40 years, Jake, and they have never, and I suspect they will never agree on every single aspect of foreign policy and what we're trying to get done in the Middle East, but they do agree on the big thing. And the big thing is the safety and security of the state of Israel, and trying to avoid an all-out war that would put the people of Israel at even greater risk. They agree on that. They're going to continue to talk and be candid and forthright with one another. Israel, I think sometimes it's easy to forget. It's a sovereign state, and it's a small state, and they live in a really tough neighborhood, and they suffered the worst terrorist attack in their history almost exactly a year ago. They're under a lot of threat. And we gotta make sure that they know that America is gonna continue to support them in beating back that threat, that we're gonna keep the force capability we need to help defend them, if possible. At the same time, have some tough conversations with them about how they do that, and what the next step.
And when you say how they do that, what you're talking about is whether or not the Israeli government and Netanyahu do enough to protect civilian casualties, whether or not they do enough to take into account.
So here's the problem. When you're
innocent-
Hamas and you embed yourself with the civilian population, how the fuck are you going to kill Hamas or Hezbollah? That's the problem, Jake. But I know because your ancestry fought for the King of England during the American Revolution, perhaps you have a problem understanding that. Or maybe it's because you went to Dartmouth. I'm not really sure. Maybe both.
Palestinians, innocent Lebanese, and it doesn't sound as though the Biden administration thinks that Netanyahu is taking that into account.
I would just say that we have had those tough conversations with our Israeli counterparts since almost the beginning. And we have made no bones about the fact that we don't necessarily see the tactical.
This is what the Rebbe was warning not to do.
But the U.S. keeps giving them weaponry to carry out these attacks.
Our support for Israel security is ironclad, Jake. That's not going to change. We are going to continue to make sure they can defend themselves. Again, this is an ally. This is a partner. And they are under attack every single day. If we were here in the United States facing those kinds of missile and drone attacks from
Just
neighboring
remember,
countries,
there were people in the United States that they were afraid to get involved in World War I and World War II. Can you imagine what the world would be like if the United States didn't get into World War II? Kirby, he's not on the right side of history.
the American people would want to make sure that we are doing what we can to protect them. And we are going to continue to do what we can to protect the Israeli people. But that doesn't mean, back to your first question about the relationship, that these two men who've known each other a long time aren't capable of having tough conversations with one another. And President Biden will continue to stand up for the right to protect civilian people and civilian infrastructure.
He's wrong. He's wrong. All right, we're going to go to another video. But before I do that, I want to talk about the anti-aging super deluxe box. So you get additional
This
products.
is the second most
Compared to the deluxe box. Let me just repeat. You get the Max 35. You get the D3. You get the C60 and your choice of extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, or MCT coconut oil. And C60 is a very strong antioxidant. You take a teaspoon of it a day. Probiotic. Your choice of deodorant, peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, or citrus. Resveratrol. Toothpaste, very high quality structural nano silver toothpaste. You get the vitamin C. Boost up your immune system. And some of the other products you get in the super deluxe box, anti-aging super deluxe box, is ashwagandha root, which helps to control your blood glucose levels and bring down your cortisol levels, bring down inflammation. Turmeric is an antioxidant and also helps to bring down inflammation. Omega-3 helps to bring down your LDL and increase your HDL lipid profile. And lastly, the vitamin B complex, which helps for cellular metabolism. It helps with improving your energy levels. The first 5 B vitamins helps with mitochondria. And that's really important for your electron transport chain. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com and get the anti-aging super deluxe box. It's a great buy. You get a lot of really high quality supplements to slow down the aging process and to improve longevity and to boost up your immune system. Okay, with that said, let's find some other stuff that's going on. And Kirby is just,
They'll try to recover.
Kirby is-
We're watching to see
Kirby-
what they do.
Kirby-
Try to throw this leadership
just-
back.
he'll always be an idiot. All right. Okay, so what I want to do is play Fox News here. Cavuto.
Andy Danon with us right now, the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations.
I don't think any one of those reactions probably surprises you, Ambassador. But now you're hearing of retribution. What comes next? What do you think comes next?
Well, first, I think it's a good date for democracy. The world is a better day today without Nasrallah. We feel similar like the American people felt when Osama bin Laden was killed. He was a notorious terrorist. He killed Americans, Israelis. He bombed the embassies, kidnapped citizens, and I think it's a great achievement of the IDF. We are at war with Hezbollah for 11 months, so we are kind of used to it. But we will continue with our lives. Schools will stay open in Israel tomorrow. But we decided to limit mega events, concerts, to see what will happen in the next few days. But I think the message was very clear. We will hunt down those terrorists wherever they are. They cannot hide. Not only we got rid of Nasrallah, but we send a clear message to its friends in Beirut and other capitals in the Middle East.
Now, Iran, as you probably know, Ambassador said it will respond. Of course, it's still waiting to see what kind of response it would have to taking out a top Hamas leader a little more than 8 weeks ago. But I am curious what you anticipate or what Israeli is preparing for, what Israelis are preparing for.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we are watching very carefully, but because we are in a war for 11 months with Hezbollah, we can't get used to it. But it's interesting to see the reaction from Iran. And they take responsibility for Hezbollah attacks against Israel. They already use those proxies. So I don't really understand what they had to do with that event. I think today the question is the Lebanese government will be able to see the moment and change the linkage that Nasrallah did between Lebanon and Gaza. Basically, Nasrallah said that he will continue to attack Israel, and he started on October 8th to attack Israel to show sympathy to the massacre of October 7th and to support Hamas. I think today there is an opening for the Lebanese government, the Lebanese people, to realize that we don't have to go for a full war. We can de-escalate the situation. They have to make sure that Hezbollah is not dragging them to that war.
All right, Ambassador, I know you can't share certain information. I well understand that, but we are learning that the Israelis did not share any of this information about these counterattacks on Hezbollah positions in southern Lebanon, just as it has in some of the other attacks, presumably on top Hamas and Hezbollah officials all over the region, if Israel was behind those. Is that true? Is this Israel doing all of this on its own without checking at the White House, checking in with the White House, sharing with the White House?
Well, I will be general, not about a specific event. I will tell you that, Israel is a sovereign country. We take our own decisions by the government, by the cabinet, and that's how democracy works. We speak with our allies, we consult with them, but at the end of the day, I don't think that our allies actually want us to call and ask for their permission. It doesn't work that way. They know in general that we're going to hand down the terrorists, the leaders, that we will find them. And I think, we killed another terrorist, Akil, who killed hundreds of Marines, soldiers back in the 80s. And same with Nasrallah, he killed many Americans. So we're fighting the same bad guys. We don't have to coordinate each and every action we take, but in general, we share the same enemies and the same values.
We do know as well, sir, that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has arrived back in Israel, left New York early yesterday, on the developments that just, of course, transpired over the last few hours. I am curious about this idea of a widening war, or Israel preparing for a widening war. You've got the Houthi rebels that are continuing to attack Israeli and Western positions, U.S. commerce along and outside of that area.
Remember what the Rebbe said. And you're talking about years ago, all right? I think that recording, when I was trying to see it in English, it was done in the 80s, all right? So maybe even 70s. Maybe some of this speech was part of the 70s speech, but either way, decades ago. And he was talking about seven fronts. So he was saying, you have the UN problem that's dragging their feet, and they're not really solving the problem, and they're always going to tell Israel to ceasefire. right? And that there's a seven fronts that you have to take care of and get it done. All right. We're seeing this play out. If Israel got the job done in the 70s or the 60s, we wouldn't have this problem. But the United States was worried about oil.
Had in the region since the early 1970s. What is next?
First, we have no interest for global war. You know, we are a peaceful nation, but we have to make sure that the residents of Israel can live peacefully. And since October 8th, since Hezbollah started to attack our northern communities, 70,000 Israelis had to fled, and you have 70,000 refugees within Israel. So we are committed to allow them to go back to their homes. If we can solve it with diplomacy,
Now,
that's
again,
what we are
you know, I may seem biased, but I also, disagree with some people from Israel, right? Israel is not a peaceful nation yet, because it's been in a state of war since its existence. Now, there are small periods of time there may be less confrontation, but it's not a state of peace. That whole region isn't in a state of peace. But if you get the job done, then that region is going to have peace and prosperity. So it's not a nation of peace yet, because it's been always in a state of war because of its environment. But get the job done. Stop kicking the can down the road.
No, it's very simple. It will require for Hezbollah to stop targeting Israel and for the Hezbollah terrorists to move north to the Litani River, exactly like Security Council Resolution 1701 decided in 2006. And everybody is saying that's what will happen at the end. The question is whether we're going to have to push back ourselves, or the Lebanese government and international diplomacy will provide them the way or the channel to take the right decision.
Ambassador, thank you very much. You know, there's been crazy hours for you, days, weeks, almost a year now since the
now the thing is
attack.
that when you're talking about our diplomats that came from Yale or Harvard or Georgetown or wherever, do you really think that they have higher intelligence than what the Rebbe had? You really think our diplomats or the ones that are working on the UN have a higher intelligence and know-how of solving this problem than the Rebbe? Probably not. Especially when Einstein meets the Rebbe and says that, and Einstein said that the Rebbe was smarter than he was. All right? Come on. I can't deal with this crap anymore. It's so idiotic because we have a country that's afraid to get anything done. All right, so now let's play France 24. Let's see what happens. This was published 2 hours ago.
For more, we speak to Kawa Hassan, a non-resident fellow at the Middle East and North Africa program at the Stimson Center. Thank you for speaking to Paris Direct. A lot of waiting as to how major regional players are going to react to this week of escalation. What are the calculations that Iran's supreme leader needs to be making?
Thank you. So Iran is indeed in a
Let me get this straight.
strategic bind.
Let me get this straight. This guy, Kawa Hassan, non-resident fellow, MENA program, the Stimson Center in Brussels, Belgium. Okay? Do you think that what he's going to say, I haven't seen this video yet. Do you really think that what he's going to say is any more profound and more insightful than what I played that was said in the 70s and in the 80s by the Rebbe from New York? Really? I mean, people are not paying attention. This is why I said these policy wonks, they're going to fuck everything up. They're going to fuck it all up because they fuck everything up all the time.
Iran is facing probably its most consequential strategic dilemma since the establishment of the Islamic Republic, for the simple reason that they have to react. But what kind of reaction and how and when, of course, that is the dilemma for the Iranian leadership, for the supreme leader. If they respond too strongly and
on October 2nd, the shofar is going to blow. All right. When it blows, Satan is silenced, and there's going to be a blessing on the Jewish people, and it's going to be the soul root of Jacob, and there's going to be a curse on the soul root of Esau. It's going to get a lot fucking worse in the Middle East, a lot fucking worse. All right. These people are stupid. If you've been paying attention to me, there's going to be some major things that are going to start developing in the next 12 months. And it's not going to be good for the ones that are negative Esau.
in a way that that invites a massive Israeli, but also maybe Western U.S. reaction, that could be devastating for the regime. And if they don't, or if they respond lightly, then that will further weaken the credibility of the Iranian regime in the region, particularly among the constituencies of the so-called axis of resistance, because the credibility of Iran and the Islamic Republic has really taken a big hit. And Israel literally, once again, has called Iran's bluff. So how they would react, that is really difficult to predict. So all eyes on Tehran, in the coming hours, days, and weeks.
Yeah, and how much pressure domestically to react? Iran's head of the judiciary saying, we have a right under international law to retaliate. How common is that sentiment in Iran?
Well, I think among the core constituencies of the regime, in the regime itself, but also the popular base of the regime, I think definitely there are calls for a harsh response, particularly from the side of the hardliners. I'm not sure whether that sentiment is shared throughout the society.
Khamenei vows to avenge Nasrallah. All right? Now let's think about that for a second. The Iranian theocrat is gonna revenge the death of a terrorist that led Hezbollah. Don't you think that this wave of movement that Netanyahu's doing, as long as he keeps on moving, is literally going to decapitate the Khamenei? I think so.
As we know, that 2 years ago there were mass protests against the regime, which was suppressed. So the Iranian society, by and large, is really more concerned with the economic hardship in the country, lack of political freedom. So most probably within the hardliners, there are increasing calls for response. But I'm not sure even there are calls for response from the more moderate reformist factions within the regime, because they know that the consequences could be devastating for the regime.
And what about Iran's proxies? How do we expect them to react? You think we'll see something from the Houthis, sustained rocket attacks, or from Hamas? I mean, what are the possibilities here? When the supreme leader said that there must be resistance, continued resistance, didn't necessarily say it would come on from Iran directly.
Right. So we should definitely expect retaliation from the Houthis for sure. And also probably from some Iraqi factions, proxies of Iran. As for Hamas, I'm not sure. They still have some capacities, but whether they really have a capacity to again attack Israel, in a more hard, massive way, that is doubted. But I think after the decapitation, if you like, of Hezbollah leadership and infiltration and disruption of its communication system. I mean, these proxies can attack definitely Israel, but I'm not sure to what extent they will be effective in, posing existential threat to the state of Israel. So definitely there will be continuous attacks, but how effective, that remains to be seen. And I doubt that Iran itself will really, engage
These
in
people that are
holding
holding Nasrallah's picture, I question how many of them really want to hold his picture. Really? Are they, they were given, these pictures and said, we're going to take pictures of you holding this picture and spread it around the world on international media. I mean, it just seems like, they got a big printer and they just send it to everybody, and everyone's outside, celebrating a major terrorist. I mean, come on. I mean, the whole world in the Middle East is some freaking upside down.
As I said, the consequences for the regime could be catastrophic.
Yeah, the way you put it, the decapitation of Hezbollah's sort of central core there. Give us an idea. 2 more senior members killed, Israel saying. What's left of that high-ranking command in Hezbollah?
That's a good question. What's left? I mean, we still have some, senior leaders like Hashim Safieddin, like Naim Qassem, so the deputy of Nasrallah, and Hashim Safieddin, the head of the executive council. There are still some, senior leaders around, but I think they have, I think decapitation is the best word to describe the impact of the Israeli, assassination of Nasrallah and other leaders. Even as your reporter from Beirut said, even last night, they took 2 more, military senior leaders. They still have, senior leaders around, but that's not the issue. I think, with time there will be a new generation coming up and take leadership, and it will take time for Hezbollah to reconstruct, reorganize itself. But I doubt it will be, the Hezbollah of Nasrallah, right, from the 90s and 2000s until now. I mean, he was, he was the one who really reorganized Hezbollah after the assassination of his predecessor, Musawi, with the help of Iran, of course. And it was a different regional context which helped him to, consolidate Hezbollah as the most proxy / partner of Iran in Middle East. I doubt they will be able to, to resurrect that Hezbollah. So most probably we may see a new Hezbollah. How that will look like, that we have to wait and see.
We're still waiting to see how Israel responds also, whether there will be this incursion into Lebanon, whether there won't be. But the statements we've heard coming from Israeli officials, Israeli military, the prime minister himself, discussing the long arm of Israel and suggesting no one was beyond its reach. The supreme leader of Iran ushered a way to a secure location with heightened security. Are there feelings that Israel might be able to do something else, like what it did with Nasrallah, in regards to the supreme leader, or is that just unfounded fears?
Right. So, I mean, right after October 7th, I wrote, a commentary in which I said basically what Hamas did, and the ensuing Israeli reaction is what I call the end of red line politics. So we used to have red lines before October 7th, in the region between Israel and Hezbollah, Israel and Iran, Israel and Hamas. But actually, those red lines, by and large, have been eliminated, if you like. So the fact that Israel has decided to kill Nasrallah and continue killing top leadership of Hezbollah, but also some key military commanders of Iran, and even attacking the Iranian consulate earlier this year, clearly tells us that the old status quo, the old rules of engagement of red lines is no longer there.
This whole this status quo. The status quo was ceasefire, don't get the job done, let the terrorists reconstitute and lob missiles. That's the old order. The red lines were preventing Israel from getting the job done because the United States was worried about perturbation of oil prices, destabilizing the region. The United States couldn't get the job done because there's stupidity in how they executed the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm telling you, what the Rebbe said is playing out. It's playing out. If you sit there and be honest with yourself and listen to what he said, what he was warning in the 60s, in the 70s, and in the 80s, it's all playing out now. And you got these talking heads that are only kicking the can down the road.
Just to cut you off on that point, sorry to interrupt. In a world where there are no more red lines, is there still a place for diplomacy?
No.
There are always space for diplomacy, and the fact that Iran doesn't want a regional war is actually
this is what I'm talking about. This whole diplomatic mission tries to trick you, even though that you may have good intentions. It's to trick you because the Satan needs to keep this thing entangled, and we're in strife. Satan cannot allow for this to be solved, because if it's solved, he dies. So he's going to try to convince you that diplomatic missions and ceasefires and creating a new order, right? Where there's peace and prosperity. But they'll let the terrorists still reconstitute. They'll still let Iran go nuclear. Not that, no. That causes much more problems down the road. Satan's trying to convince you to go into this direction. Just get the job done. Get the job done. And there's peace and prosperity around the world. And if you're not fearful, it'll happen quick. That's the thing. It will happen quick. This might not be a protracted war. This may actually end very quickly. If Israel's not fearful and just get the job done. Why? Because God is going to allow it to happen. See, when you're fearful, God comes in and says, "Oh, no, you can't do that. Oh, I'm going to help your enemies. Don't be fearful. Just get the job done. Things are going to be fast. It's going to be solved fast." These diplomats, they think that they can talk their way out.
Even though they, unconditionally support Israel, they don't want a regional war. Regional countries, they don't want a regional war. So there is still space for diplomacy. But what is needed is a political vision and political will, particularly from the side of the US and other powers. Also, China, others, and regional countries really should put pressure. First, they should put pressure on Israel to reach a ceasefire with Hamas, and hostages being released. Because at the end of the day, the past 3-4 days, we have been all consumed by the impact of the assassination of Nasrallah, and rightly so. But the root cause of the problem in the Middle East is the Palestinian issue. As long as that is not resolved, violence only breeds violence. So at the end of the day, what is needed, there is always a space for diplomacy. And as we speak, there might be all kind of negotiations behind the scenes, which is a good, which is a good sign. But
entanglement
what is needed for the region is a settlement, if not an agreement where Palestinians get justice and statehood, and Israelis get the security they want to. So that is at the end of the day, what I think, what all diplomatic, all powers, regional, international, should work towards.
Kawa, thank you very much for your time. Kawa Hassan joining us.
Where it is that the Lebanese are scared shitless now. Hezbollah is scared shitless, and Iran's worried that this is going to escalate towards them. That's what's happening. And they're trying to get the diplomatic community, on their side to try to slow down and prevent Netanyahu from moving forward. But again, what the Rebbe said was, don't listen to the international community, because what's going to happen is it's going to be worse down the road in years to come. All right, I'm going to be now discussing the anti-aging structural nano silver box. So you get the Max 35, you get the structural nano silver gel, the structural nano silver toothpaste, you get a very high quality structural nano silver soap, and you get to pick out of the 5 varieties. The one that I have here is the lemongrass, but there's charcoal tea tree, peppermint, a couple others. You get the probiotic, and you get your choice of Manuka honey lozenges in a 21 count or elderberry zinc lozenges in a 21 count. They're made from structural nano silver. It'll help to neutralize pathogens and maintain that mucosal barrier. It's really important. The moment you have that throat irritation, to take the lozenges and neutralize the pathogen and maintain that mucosal barrier so you don't get further infections. So structural nano silver lozenges are really important to take right at the very beginning to try to mitigate a cold or whatever. And we're in the cold season, so it's important to get. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the anti-aging structural nano silver box. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is right now Al Jazeera is playing, but they're not focused at this moment in time on Israel. They're focused on soccer. So let me just go to a different video here. Okay, news. Yeah, well, that's one day ago. Let's see what, no, I think I played that already. Vengeance. Shiny. I'm trying to find some there's a lot of Harris popping up in the news feed here. Oh, I'm gonna switch a little bit here. CNN did something on Mitt Romney. I think it's kind of important to just cursory kind of go through.
It takes 5 seconds to skip the video and also 5 seconds to save a life. Let me tell you how. The recent conflict has left
In a stunning new interview in The Atlantic, we find Senator Mitt Romney bracing for another Trump presidency. In the new afterword of the book, Romney, A Reckoning, the author McKay Coppins writes, Romney knew that he was likely to appear on any enemy's list kept by the former president, and he privately mused to friends that it might be time for him and his wife to consider moving abroad. Joining me now is McKay Coppins, a former Republican presidential candidate, says he may need to move abroad if
Trump, it's always orange man bad. You see how Satan's working with the entanglement, to create strife. All right. Orange man bad. He can't do anything right. No. But let's, dive into the details here. Perhaps Mitt Romney did something wrong and there needs to be an investigation, because I'm willing to believe that there's evidence out there that shows that the rhinos actually were in cahoots with each other to try to prevent Trump from being reelected and to retard his presidency and the policies that he wanted to do overseas. And you got to remember, what's Trump? He's about making America stronger. He's America first, make America stronger with manufacturing prowess, reduce the unfair trade that's going on, and to build up the military. That's an anti-globalist agenda. That's not, Mitt Romney is a globalist, 100% globalist. All right. So maybe he's worried and embracing because he did something wrong.
Because he might be prosecuted or his family might be prosecuted. How tongue-in-cheek is it?
Yeah, I mean, I should say up front that this is not something that Mitt Romney.
But it's okay to do lawfare on Donald Trump. Can't do lawfare on Mitt Romney because he's a globalist.
you know, for this book, I talked to him for 2 years. We talked about a lot of stuff. He was usually very candid with me. When I came to him to interview him for this new afterward in the paperback, I asked him because I had heard from people in his circle that he was really worried about what a Trump reelection would be for him and his family. And I asked him about it, and he didn't want to go there at first. And I think it's in part because he didn't want to set himself up as a martyr. I think he also has understandable security concerns about talking about this stuff too much in public. But once I did get him talking, it was clear that he had thought through the ramifications of a president being reelected.
Because he was put into office.
Use the office
to try to stop Trump. I'm telling you.
And Mitt Romney knows that would be on that enemies list. He's worried about protecting his family. As he said, you know, I have 25.
You know the thing is, what it is, you had lawfare that went after Trump because he's an anti-globalist and wanted to shake up the system and make America stronger and protect our constitutional rights. But then you got these journalists that were trying to, you know, say Orange Man bad, and they're all saying they're worried. Well, they were in cahoots with saying that the fake dossier from the Clintons was real. You know, it was a real Russian thing, right? The media and the rhinos were pushing this, you know, Russian collusion fakery to try to convince the American public that Orange Man is bad. The rhinos and the mainstream media said that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation. You know, the reality of the situation is the national security state knows that they did something wrong. And now, hopefully, if Trump gets into office, he goes after them and prosecutes them for interfering in elections, because that's exactly what the FBI did.
Have 25 grandkids. Right. It's a real concern, and I think it's a pretty stark reminder of where we are as a country, that the 2012 Republican presidential nominee is so worried, afraid about what it would mean for his personal safety, his family's safety, if
he's afraid.
Republican nominee would.
Think about the safety of.
First of all, his family safety is fine. That's all BS. That's a canard. But the thing is that, you know, Mitt Romney can't have lawfare, but it's okay to do lawfare on Trump. Lawfare on anybody is wrong. But the reality is that there was a cabal that tried to deep six Trump's candidacy and his presidency when he was in office. And Mitt Romney was one of the ringleaders.
Yeah,
Mike Pence.
Exactly.
Not exactly, who hasn't endorsed Donald Trump either. So when Romney was asked about this election, you write, quote, still throwing his support behind a president whose policies he'd spent decades fighting against was a difficult thing to do. He told me he wasn't ruling it out. What do you think he's like? I know that this, we don't know, and like, it's just, in your gut, how do you think he's going to vote for president?
So it's a good question. I mean, look, when I interviewed him, it was in the spring. Joe Biden was still the Democratic nominee. He actually has a good relationship with Biden. They've become friends. I write about this in the book. He told me he wasn't ruling out at that point endorsing Joe Biden. But he said, you know, the problem is so many of Joe Biden's policies drive me.
That's what a rhino does.
And I don't want to be seen as endorsing those policies. I haven't gotten to talk to him about Kamala Harris on the record. He's kind of gone quiet, as you know. He's not really giving a lot of interviews anymore.
We're interviewing a guy who talked to Mitt Romney.
And I'm happy.
You're like, it's like a Bigfoot sighting in the wild.
I think that if I was, the last two elections, he's written his wife's name in on the ballot. Is it possible that he votes for the Democrat? I think it's possible. I don't know if we would hear about it publicly. But he also believes, and I think this is important context, he does not think his endorsement would make a difference. He thinks he has so alienated the Republican voters out there that his decision to endorse Kamala Harris would make no meaningful difference.
I don't know that that's true. I mean, I wouldn't tell them what to do one way or the other, but I mean, Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney have endorsed Kamala Harris essentially, and you can argue they're farther to the right. and neither one of them is in office, and Mitt Romney is.
You know, one question that I have, and I think I'm going to do some more reporting on this, is whether Mitt Romney or other Republicans like him have heard from the Harris camp. You know, my impression is that he has not, at least, you know, months ago when we talked, that the Democratic campaign wasn't knocking down his door asking for an endorsement. Maybe that's changed, and I'll look into it, but I would be curious if Kamala Harris would welcome that endorsement.
That's interesting. So Romney says in this afterward that he is looking forward to a post-Trump era. Who leads that party? Who leads the post? Let's assume, just for the sake of argument, and I'm not saying I think this is what's going to happen. Let's say Donald Trump loses and actually decides to go softly into that goodness. Mm-hmm. Who leads the Republican Party after that?
No, I don't think we have any idea. The question that people like Mitt Romney have is, does the fever break, to use an overused cliche in Washington these days, when Trump finally...
I think Rand Paul is officially an independent, but I would love to see Rand Paul run for as a Republican. Another star that I think is in the Republican Party is Jim Jordan.
These days, Obama was talking about
that's
the fever breaking
right.
because of Mitt Romney.
That's right, the Tea Party, yeah. But look, I think that Mitt Romney is hopeful that if Trump goes away, a lot of the kind of personality cult stuff in the Republican Party will go away. That a lot of the outrageous defenses of everything that Trump does and says, that will at least go away. But the Republican Party is also ideologically transformed under Trump.
Yeah, they like tariffs now.
That's right. It's more isolationist. Yeah. It's more nationalistic. It's more populist. They're not very concerned about the size and scope of government anymore. That's the stuff that brought Mitt Romney to the Republican Party.
Right.
And, you know, I think that he and Republicans like him are going to have a hard time if that ideological transformation stays in place after.
I mean, maybe Cheney and Romney and the others can form a new conservative party.
I think Mitt Romney would be very interested.
All right. Let me tell you about the anti-aging skin health beginner's box. You get collagen, all right? You get a big scooper here. You take a scooper a day and you mix it with milk. You can mix it with food. I've mixed it with milk. I've mixed it with hummus. You can mix it with water. It's up to you. It has a great amino acid profile here, right, for this container. And you would take this every day to help improve your skin. In addition, you get vitamin C. Vitamin C cross-links with collagen. Drink it with filtered water, 32 to 64 ounces throughout the day, all right, to build up that dermal layer so there's more elasticity, it's healthier looking. Then topically, you would put the structural nanosilver gel on your skin every day. A great way to do this for skin improvement is to put it on your skin, including your face, right before you go to bed, and then exfoliate when you wake up in the morning. You'll notice that your skin is clear and your skin's tighter, all right? That's the beginner's box, the anti-aging skin health beginner's box. Now, in the advanced box, you also get everything, like I said, you get the collagen, the gel, and the vitamin C, but you get two other items. You get the resveratrol that helps to get rid of senescent cells. It's also an antioxidant. All right, that's important because when you get rid of senescent cells, then you're able to get those tissues a little bit healthier because the adult stem cells will rejuvenate and create new cells. All right, so this is improving your basal layer of your skin. And that's important because the basal layer is where new skin cells start to form. And then also taking the C60, take a teaspoon of it a day to improve that basal layer. How that works is that this will soak up those free radicals in that basal layer. And then what will happen is that your mitochondria in those cells will improve. So you'll have more energy, and just the whole area of that basal layer on your skin will improve. And so what happens is that now the adult stem cells in that basal layer that's regenerating new skin cells are going to start becoming healthier and moving up to the surface of your skin. We have about 7 layers of skin, all right? And the higher up you go, closer to the surface of your skin, the more keratin, all right? So C60 improves the lower part of your skin, the basal layer. So with C60, take a teaspoon of it a day. It's a very strong antioxidant, soaks up those free radicals. There's going to be a lot of free radicals because of sun damage and and just exposure to chemicals and toxins and stuff that your skin is touching daily, right? So there's going to be free radicals that are created in your skin, right? And it's important to soak those up. So take the teaspoon of C60 every day. You have your choice of extra virgin olive oil, MCT coconut oil, or avocado oil in the 2-ounce bottle. So you get some very powerful supplements for skincare. Do that every day, and you'll notice after about a month, big improvements in your skin, right? So go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the anti-aging skin health beginner's box or the advanced box. Please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, so now what I want to do is see what else is going on with. All right, this is Pompeo. He just spoke at Fox News just now.
This is Israel. This is the heart of Israel, Judea and Samaria.
Joining us now, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Secretary, good to have you with us. What do you make of what the senator had to say about the fact that the Biden-Harris administration has been full-throated and unequivocal in supporting Israel?
Well, good morning, Shannon. Look, Senator Coon is a nice man, but he's just living in a fantasy world. The most important people who make the determination about whether America is providing enough support, frankly, are the Iranians, Hamas, and Hezbollah. And they have felt free to fire missiles into Israel, kill 1,200 Israelis, continuing to hold Americans hostage. We don't even talk about that anymore. They're still hostages held by the Iranian regime in Gaza today. Instead of talking about a ceasefire, which is what Secretary Austin spoke about, what Secretary Blinken speaks about, we should be saying plain and clear, finish the job. Nasrallah would be alive today if the Biden administration ceasefire had gone into effect. The entire Hezbollah leadership would be alive today if the Israelis had agreed to the ceasefire that Hamas had demanded and that the Iranians had demanded and the United States had supported. Make no mistake about it. We know history. We know the history from 1967. We know the history from 1973. There is only one thing that will protect Israel and make the Middle East more prosperous.
I swear some people are listening to me. I wonder who.
And that is the demonstration of power and imposing costs on Israel's adversaries.
Okay, so there were reports in Axios earlier this week that Hezbollah had asked Iran to directly strike Israel. They didn't want to do that because their president was here speaking at the UN in the US. Well, now there are questions about if Hezbollah is disabled, does Iran now move forward with that? There's a quote by Trita Parsi, the executive VP of the Quincy Institute here in Washington, talking about this, saying, if it becomes clear to Iran that Hezbollah actually cannot defend itself following the bombing in Beirut, then the Iranian justification for staying out of the war has collapsed. At that point, Iran's credibility with the rest of its partners in the axis of regional militant groups will risk collapsing if Tehran does not react. Do you worry about where this has pushed Iran to and what happens next?
Shannon, Trita Parsi has been an Iranian sympathizer for a long time. He works closely alongside some of the leaders inside of the country. The way to convince Iran to stay out of this conflict is to demonstrate that the Americans and the Israelis together can hold Iranian leadership to account, impose real costs on them. And when they see the leadership of Hezbollah destroyed, when they see Hamas dismantled, when they see the United States prepared to actually support that, and they see our Gulf partners recognize that they too can trust the United States of America, that's how you keep Iran at bay. It's how you push back against what, frankly, the Biden-Harris administration has allowed, the continuation of the Iranian nuclear program to build. There's only one way. You have to put pressure on them. You have to deny them resources. You can't hand them billions of dollars and then tell the Israelis to stand down and have any prayer that not only will Israel do well, but we shouldn't forget this. Hezbollah and Nasrallah killed more Muslims than just about anybody else over the last decades. This is a regional challenge. It's one for the world, and the United States demanding that Israel stop when the task ahead of them is to finish the job is a mistake and only creates further risk of escalation.
Yeah, it seems wise for Prime Minister Netanyahu to speak at the UN about the people of Iran, the people of Lebanon, the people who live in Gaza, and wanting to rescue them from their oppressors too, to your point. Secretary, thank you.
Thank you, Shannon.
Hey, I think Pompeo was 100% right. Unfortunately, when I do these events over at the Harvard Club, almost every single political oriented event, it's always Orange Man bad. Orange Man bad. I saw a book release over there dealing with it's called America Last is the name of the book. All right. I can't remember the name of the author at the moment. But he writes for some publications, famous publications. I don't know. But he's a liberal. All right. And it was Orange Man bad. And the whole MAGA movement is just a bunch of, right-wing nuts is, basically, that his take, and the reality of the situation is that he wasn't really paying attention to what Pompeo said in his own book about America First, right? America First is about making sure that we maintain our hegemonic power, our military prowess, and our manufacturing base, right? But the ultra liberal wants to erode that. And guess what? How does it get eroded? By pushing globalism. So it's okay. So let's drop into Al Jazeera here. They're starting to talk about what's going on in Israel wave of attacks.
It's been reported that Israeli has conducted more than 15 airstrikes. They have targeted Hodeidah main port and as well Ras Isa port. Ras Isa port is one of the main oil ports of Yemen. That port is where Yemeni receiving their fuel from outside. And as well, they have targeted one of the largest power station in Yemen, which is Al Khatib power station, and as well Al Hali power station in Hodeidah as well. And firefighters now are trying to put the fire out in those two power stations. And there are reports of one death and several casualties in those latest attack against Yemen and Hodeidah.
Hussein, help us understand the significance of Hodeidah. This is really a key entry point for humanitarian aid to a country that has been suffering from malnutrition, starvation. The United Nations has warned of famine in several areas. What does it mean for Hodeidah to be bombed?
I believe this is the main goal of the Israeli regime, is to put pressure on the Yemeni people. Hodeidah port, as you say, is one of the most economic city for Yemen, and to target that port means that Israeli want or trying to close it, and as well targeting those power stations. This means it will affect only the Yemeni civilians, because Israeli, they know that they cannot actually target the military installation or actually stop or preventing Yemeni from targeting Israel, because they know that Saudi, for example, they have conducted more than 250,000 airstrike. They couldn't stop the Yemeni army, and as well hundreds of attacks by the United States and the UK in the last several months. They could not stop. That's why I believe they will continue targeting civilian infrastructure that affect.
What did the Rebbe say? Don't be fearful, move forward, get the job done, and there will be a blessing that allows you to have less casualties. There will be a blessing by not being fearful and be willing to get the job done. Satan is trying to convince you not to finish the job. So he maintains power. We're seeing Satan speak to us in these events.
Yemenis, but as well, I want to mention that Muhammad Abdul Salam, the spokesperson of Ansarullah, also known the Houthi, he said that those attacks actually will not stop or prevent or obstruct Yemeni from attacking the Zionist state of Israel, or from keeping or continuing to support the people of Lebanon as well the people of Palestine.
And so tell us what the Houthis might do next.
He has to read a piece of
I
paper.
think, or I believe that it could be one of now the main target for Yemeni army is to target Israeli port and as well to target Israeli offshore gas platform, because if they do so, this means it will actually affect and damage the Israeli regime.
Now remember, Yemen is not really peaceful with the Saudis. Now you can see on how Ishmael can align with Jacob.
Infrastructure, I believe that this attack could target, as they say, those gas platforms, and I believe that could be in the coming hour that Yemeni will extend their attack against Israel, and it will not. I don't believe that will be only with one missile or one drone. I think they will launch several of those missiles and drones at once because they actually want to support the Palestinian people.
And so tell me, Hussein, do you think they will? Do you think the Houthis will also focus on sort of strategic shipping lanes?
Nope. I mean, for the shipping lane, Yemeni army actually has successfully blocked the Red Sea in front of any Israeli linked ship or ship.
And now you know why the Abraham Lincoln Strike Group is in the region.
And as well have formed the blockade against any company or a shipping company that is dealing with Israel. As we remember that in the last attack that had targeted an oil tanker that belonged to a Greek shipping company, that attack actually was because that shipping company, one of their ships has head to one of the Israeli regime port. And I think that Yemeni could actually extend the attack not only against those shipping companies, it could actually form a blockade against country that's actually dealing with Israel, like the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and maybe Jordan, because we know that the Israeli regime has actually avoided this blockade in the Red Sea by sending their ships toward the United Arab Emirates port, and then all the goods on those ships is transported by truck through United Arab Emirates and then Saudi Arabia and Jordan. That's why I believe all of those states, it could be for that blockade against the country that's actually helping Israeli to avoid the blockade.
Hussein, thank you very much. Hussein al-Bukhaiti joining us from the capital of Yemen, Sana'a. Let's speak to Hamda Salhout. She's following developments for us from Amman in Jordan because the Israeli government has banned Al Jazeera from reporting inside the country. What is Israel saying about launching these airstrikes in Yemen?
Well, the Israeli military has released quite an extensive statement saying that this was a significant operation that included army fighter jets along with intelligence aircrafts and refuelers, saying that they struck multiple targets in the port, saying that they were used for Houthi military activities. The Israelis say that this is in direct response to the several different missiles that have been launched by the Houthis in Yemen towards Israeli territory. In the last month, you're looking at least 3 surface-to-surface missiles that have been launched that were intercepted by the Israeli military. Now, the Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has just released a statement along with a photo of him observing the strikes in the Kiryat, that's Israel's defense ministry in Tel Aviv, saying that no place is too far for Israel to strike. But it's important to note this is not the first time we've seen Israeli strikes in Yemen. Previously, we saw them back in July after the Houthis had sent a drone nearly 2,000 kilometers from Yemen to Tel Aviv, and it was actually able to bypass all air defenses and detonate in the center of the city. So Israel says they remain on high alert and that any action against them will not go unanswered.
We've also seen a concentration of Israeli troops on the border with Lebanon. What are they saying about the possibility of a ground invasion?
Well, Well, there's been a lot circling about this looming ground offensive into Lebanese territory, but nonetheless, Israel says that all options are on the table, that it's something that they would actually consider, even given the fact that more than 1 million Lebanese people have now been displaced as a result of Israeli bombardment in Lebanon. Israel has allocated a lot of military resources toward the border, including reserve brigades, as well as armored vehicles and tanks and other types of military equipment. The army has also been saying that they are prepared for any possible scenario. Previously, they've said this would be a limited ground incursion of a smaller scope, not similar to what we saw in Gaza, but nonetheless, it would still be an invasion into Lebanese territory. The Israeli Army Chief of Staff, Herzi Halevi, has been speaking to troops in the north over the last week or so and has been saying, quote, your boots will be in enemy territory, also adding that the force of Israeli airstrikes are to make it easier for Israeli forces to go into Lebanon, similar to what we saw in Gaza nearly a year ago. While there hasn't been anything concrete from the Israelis, it's still an option that is most certainly on the table.
Okay, thank you. Hamda Salhut in Amman, Jordan. We turn to Gaza now. The bombardment there has continued. The latest strike hit a school in Beit Lahia in the north. 4 people were killed. The building had been housing displaced people. Several others, including women and children, were injured. Hind Al-Khudri has this update now from Deir al-Balah. She's at the Al-Aqsa Hospital.
Despite the distraction in Lebanon and the Israeli forces operation there, Israeli operations in Gaza continue as the Israeli forces continue to target different areas in the Gaza Strip. They just targeted a man that was killed in Musayrat and was transferred to an Al-Aqsa hospital. And earlier today, they targeted Fahim school, a school that was sheltering dozens of families in Beit Lahia in the northern Gaza Strip. At least 4 displaced Palestinians were killed and 15 others were injured. Among them are women and children. Now, this is not the first school that has been targeted since the beginning of the war. Let's talk about September. At least 10 schools have been targeted this month, where at least 80 other Palestinians were killed in those attacks. Now, as the operation in Lebanon continues, Palestinians are also stressed and traumatized about what they're seeing, because it's more of a year now. They're seeing this, they're living it, and not only that, they do not believe that the war is still ongoing, and they're going to mark the first year of this war in the next couple of days. Hind Al-Khudri, Al-Aqsa Hospital, Gaza, Palestine.
You're with Al Jazeera, live from Doha. Still ahead.
I'm Dominic Kane in Poland, finding out just how effective Germany's toughened new border control regime really is.
So I'd like to talk about the anti-Fauci box that I have. The anti-Fauci box has the Max 35, the magnesium and zinc to help boost up your immune system, D3, turmeric, and ashwagandha. Now, the anti-Fauci advanced box has everything I just mentioned, but I add in the 2-ounce C60, and it's your choice of extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, or avocado oil. And this is a very strong antioxidant. Now, there is the anti-Fauci deluxe box, and I have 3 additional products, and that's lignans that helps to boost up your immune system and helps with your hormonal health. It's for males and females. Digestive enzyme complex that helps to break down carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. But what's very interesting about this is that the enzymes that are in here will help to break up glycoproteins, very important, and it is fibrinolytic to help break up clots. And omega-3, which helps with lowering your LDL, raising your HDL levels, so it's improving your cholesterol, but it also helps to prevent the red blood cells from sticking. And that's important for people that are concerned about clots. So please go to my store, get the anti-Fauci box, anti-Fauci advanced box, or the anti-Fauci deluxe box. Again, in the deluxe box, you get the Max 35, the magnesium and zinc, the D3, the turmeric and ashwagandha, your choice of C60, which is a very strong antioxidant, digestive enzyme complex to help break up those clots and digest those and break up those glycoproteins. Lignans helps to boost up your immune system, and the omega-3 to prevent the red blood cells from sticking too much, and also to bring down your LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the different anti-Fauci boxes that I offer. All right, I want to play News Nation here.
Israel launching a new round of airstrikes in Lebanon today, taking out more Hezbollah commanders after the stunning assassination of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah on Friday. Nabil Koch, a member of Hezbollah's Central Council and a key military leader for the terror group, killed. Iran responding to the recent string of attacks and one of its key proxies saying the deaths of Nasrallah and other Hezbollah leaders will not go unavenged. This rhetoric amping up fears of a ground invasion of Lebanon and a greater war in the region. The U.S. State Department urging Americans to leave Lebanon due to the unpredictable nature of ongoing conflict. To talk more about it, I am joined today by former Marine Intelligence Officer and co-host of the Strat podcast, Hal Kemper. Hal, thank you so much for coming on. Good to have you. So, Israeli officials, they haven't ruled out the possibility of a ground incursion on Lebanon, but here's the thing. Given how successful they've been with recent attacks, you would say, is it even necessary? Are they even going to do that? So do you think it's actually likely this would happen? And if so, what would a ground invasion even look like?
Jesse, what the U.S. is looking at and what they've been saying is that we need to be, basically ready that Israel is going to go into do a ground incursion or a ground invasion, if you will, so Lebanon. Everything coming out of that is it's going to be a limited incursion. It may be to enforce UN Resolution 1701, which basically Hezbollah at that time had agreed to pull its forces back north of the Litani River. Of course, they violated that immediately after that was done around 2006, 2007, and it might be to push them back. One thing to remember, they went in there in 2006. That did not go well. All right, it was not a great operation from an IDF standpoint. They've learned a lot of lessons since. What you're seeing now is the application of those lessons, that preparation of the battle space, if you will, that degradation of Hezbollah capabilities before they go in on the ground.
And it's been effective, right? So in the past 24 hours, we've received reports that 2 more Hezbollah commanders have been killed. Israel effectively wiping out Hezbollah high command over the past 2 weeks. The question becomes, how effective was it, right? How degraded is Hezbollah right now? Are they going to be able to effectively rebuild?
That actually is the question, is how degraded are they? You have to remember, they went away from cell phones because they didn't trust them. So they started using pagers. Well, the pagers exploded and took out a huge number. Not just the number killed wasn't that big, but the number seriously injured was rather catastrophic for them. And then, of course, they rely on the walkie-talkies, if you will. They had no radios. Those exploded. They don't have a trusted wire or fiber optic system. That they believe that was compromised a long time ago. So they can't communicate well with their commanders, if you will, across Hezbollah. And now they've taken out commanders, people in charge, who've literally been there for decades. Many of these, like Nasrallah himself, have been there since the beginning of Hezbollah. There is no smooth replacement plan because they've never been replaced. These guys have been there forever. So it has put them in command, control, communications disarray. And they have to take that into account, as does Iran have to take that into account, which is they even defend themselves.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your screen. And don't forget,
please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And it's important for you to detoxify your body. I have a great product on my store. It's zeolite. It helps to remove heavy metals, toxins, chemicals, and even forever chemicals. If you've heard of the term forever chemicals, those are PFAS and PFAS and other types of chemicals. But it's in our air, in our water, in our foods that we eat, even in the clothing that we wear or the cooking wear that some people have in their kitchen. So it's important to detoxify your body from these forever chemicals, heavy metals, toxins. Now, the first thing you do is try to mitigate the exposure. That means you need to filter your water and you need to eat foods that are not exposed to these types of chemicals. So, eat organic, stop eating processed foods, stop eating out. Most of the food that is at restaurants are full of chemicals. In addition, detoxify your body by taking zeolite. Zeolite is a negatively charged molecule that will attach to positively charged heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals. You can detoxify throughout the whole year, every day, by just taking a couple drops underneath your tongue and just drink filtered water, and do that every day as a maintenance. Some people, what they do is they may only detoxify their body once or twice a year by taking a few drops and putting it under their tongue, swallowing it with filtered water, and doing that each day until they're done with the bottle. And they do that once or twice a year. It's up to you. But the type of zeolite that I have, you can take year round. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take zeolite. If you are on medication, please talk to your doctor first before taking zeolite, because you want to make sure that your dosage is adjusted as you're detoxifying your body, because zeolite might bind to your medication and lower your dosage. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the zeolite. I also have olive leaf extract. This is a dual purpose product. It will improve your immune system and improve your cardiovascular system by bringing down inflammation, and also by improving your lipid profile by lowering your LDL levels and increasing your HDL levels. Please go to my store and get the olive leaf extract and take it every day. It's a dual purpose product. People that have a problem sleeping need to take my good night formula. It's very important to take every day if you have a problem sleeping. By not sleeping well, you're not detoxifying your body. Not sleeping well, you're not consolidating memory. Not sleeping well, what will happen is you're going to have less energy and you're going to age faster. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the good night formula. It's very important to get good probiotics. All right. I have a veggie cap version and I also have a powdered version. I use the powdered version usually. I just mix it with my hummus in the afternoon. You can mix it with water or other foods, doesn't matter. It's a great way to improve your gut biome so you have better absorption of nutrients and better metabolism. And it'll improve your skin and also improve your mental clarity and your mental health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get either my powdered probiotic or the veggie cap probiotic. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, so what I want to do is go to one more video here. Yeah, live news. I would say I don't want to play a long one. Yeah, this is major setback, serious blow. That was keen. Well, Pompeo, this is the longer version, a little bit. This was on Cudlow with Mike Pompeo.
Look at him, blissfully unaware. He has no idea that without deep observability from Gigamon, his hybrid cloud infrastructure is
No threat will shake me, no enemy will intimidate me, and I have never been more determined than I am today, and I will never back down in my fight to make America great again.
All right, there you have it. Tough talk from Mr. Trump. Joining us now on set, Mike Pompeo, 70th Secretary of State. Fox News contributor. Mike, thank you very much for this. You have running a piece on Fox Digital. Iran supports Kamala Harris, but you're also concerned. You think Iran is trying to assassinate Trump?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt about that the Iranians are serious about interfering on our election, impacting the outcome, and that they want to gain what they would describe as vengeance for the death of Qasem Soleimani. So whether it's President Trump or me or one of the senior military leaders, they are determined to do that. And so, you know, we've had 2 assassination attempts. I couldn't tell you if they're connected to this Iranian activity, but I know the FBI is working on it, and they have seen instances where the Iranians are definitely coming after American senior leaders. And we now know that they have stolen information from the Trump campaign, attempted at least to provide it to the Harris campaign, the Biden campaign. They are fully active, and they will be these last 6 weeks as well.
And they have always threatened you. And you still have Secret Service protection.
That's right. The State Department provides protection for me. Yeah, they've come after me a couple of times. They know that what we did in our administration was take the hard actions that tough people have to take to protect America. That put them in the penalty box, and we had them almost, and you were part of this too. We had an economic model that had put real pressure on the regime itself, and they don't want to see that come back because they know they were less secure, and it was a more dangerous world for them instead of for us when President Trump was in office.
And you do think they would prefer Kamala Harris as the next president?
Of course.
Well, think about the 2 models. There's the Obama-Biden-Harris model, which was appease, reward, give billions of dollars, send plane loads of pallets of cash, pay for hostages to be returned, tell the Israelis to stand down and demand a ceasefire when Hamas and the terrorists are trying to kill them. And then there's the model that we had, which was to put maximum pressure on them, deny them the resources to fund Hezbollah and the Houthis, to put pressure on their nuclear program because they just didn't have the money to support it. No, there's no doubt which made their world a better place and ours less so.
You know, Secretary, Biden's speech yesterday at the UN, among many things he said, quote, "The world must end this era of war," which I find quite remarkable. Appeasement is a catalyst for that era of war. When you and Mr. Trump left office, the world was at peace. Now suddenly the world is on fire. I don't think that's a coincidence.
No, it's not a coincidence. These bad guys, whether it's Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin or Chairman Kim in North Korea, they understand one thing. They understand power. And to go to the UN and say, guys, these things must end, as if you're a 5th grade bystander. As, gosh, I sure hope this all ends. When you tell Hamas that you're demanding Israel stand down, when you tell the Ukrainians, gosh, you can't fire into certain target sets, you are telling the bad guys that you're not prepared to defend the things that matter. And one thing we were really good at in the Trump administration, we didn't send the 82nd Airborne to fight every war. We didn't send Marine divisions around the world. We used American power at its most fundamental economic basis, American power in terms of diplomatic and military leverage, without putting our young boys and girls at risk. And President Biden and I think our President Harris would take that same appeasement weakness path, and that creates escalation and risk every time. Ronald Reagan had it right. President Obama, Biden, and President Harris all have it wrong.
You know, Walter Russell Mead is a very distinguished academic. He's writing every single diplomatic initiative by Mr. Biden. Afghanistan, which was a catastrophe, the threats about Ukraine that Putin completely ignored, the Iranian situation that you're describing, every diplomatic initiative has failed, one after another, including Israel, including Saudi Arabia, including ignoring
This
the Abraham.
is why I said that the ultra-liberal, you're going to see it eating its own tail, and it's going to be cursed, and it's going to start failing. I said this in October of last year. You're seeing it playing out. I'm not wrong. I am not wrong on this.
When they first came into office, this is stuff that Mr. Trump and you put in place. It was right there for them, and they threw it out the window, and then look what happened.
That's the damnedest thing. I read the piece that Walter Russell Mead wrote. He captured it exactly right. He captured the perception that the bad guys would have. You know, I would add to this our southern border, right? A huge national security risk, having now millions of people in our country that we have no idea who the heck they are. We could all wake up to a really bad morning someday when some terrorists who infiltrated our southern border because President Biden gave up what the Trump administration had put in place there that had caused illegal immigration to dwindle. This is a national security failure in the same way that Afghanistan's a failure, the same way that the war in Europe is a failure, and the same way that the war ongoing in the Middle East is a failure today.
And I don't want to be mundane about it, but you know, you talk about defense, military. The Bidens cut the military budget year after year in real terms. As a share of GDP, I just tracked this with the CBO baseline. We're now going to fall well below 3% of GDP. When I was a young man, assistant budget director for Ronald Reagan, when he was crusading against Soviet communism, he ran that up to 6.5% to 7% of GDP. Now we have this world that's on fire. We're going to have to raise defense spending. The Bidens won't. I do not believe Ms. Harris will either.
The fact of the matter is that not only have we seen these strategic failures in the moment, but they have also put us on our back foot in terms of long-range strategic preparedness. So think about the Space Force that President Trump created. They haven't put the resources in place to back that up. We have a Navy that is smaller than it's been in an awfully long time. They now told our allies.
This is why it's so important. This is why it's so important to be America first, and make sure that we have a manufacturing prowess to be able to execute a war if needed. On top of that, when you have manufacturing prowess, you have innovation prowess, because it's through manufacturing, building stuff, where you learn on innovation. When you outsource that, your supply chain gets innovation, and they learn new techniques and new ways of doing things. And society that outsources all that stuff starts getting dumb. Now you wonder why the average American has a 98 IQ.
Things that are going to command increased resources, and there's no chance that President Harris would ever put those resources in place.
So just to square the circle at the end here, last word. I mean, no wonder Iran thinks it can get away with interfering with our elections and literally coming after our leaders.
No one has posed any costs on any of our adversaries. And when you don't do that, and you're not prepared to do it, and all you talk about is the things you won't do, when you constantly talk about the things you won't do and your fear of escalation, the bad guys are going to drive a truck through that, Larry.
Unbelievable. Secretary, thank you. Thank you.
It's wonderful.
Really appreciate it. Thanks ever so much.
Okay. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the NAC. I take NAC every day now. I've added it to my protocol this year. This is important because it brings up the glutathione levels, and that's a very strong antioxidant. You need that to soak up those free radicals to reduce the cellular stress. The NAC also helps to detoxify your liver and your kidney, and it helps with mental, calming the mental processes. So if you're worried about anxiety, if you have anxiety, that sort of thing, NAC can calm that down. Nattokinase, very important as a fibrinolytic, breaks up clots, and at higher doses, it will bring down LDL levels and raise your HDL levels, so it improves your cardiovascular health, improves your lipid profile. Myotrol is a new product that I have on my store, and it helps for you to build muscle, maintain muscle, and improve your mitochondrial health. This is extremely important as you get older, to be able to maintain muscle mass and to be able to gain muscle mass. It works even better when you do some cardiovascular and some resistance training. So please go to my store, help build muscle, help maintain your mitochondrial health by taking Myotrol. It's a great supplement. It's new on my store. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. Vitamin K2 helps with bone health, joint health, but also cardiovascular health. Take it every day. Ubiquinol. I've been taking ubiquinol for many years. Ubiquinol is a active form for CoQ10. It helps to increase and protect neuron health, right? So that's very important as you get older. You need to improve your neural health. It's an antioxidant and it helps to improve energy levels. It's synergistic with C60. So take ubiquinol every day. You're going to improve your mental acuity. You're going to maintain those neural networks. You're going to improve the neural health of your cells, your neural cells. In addition, cells in the rest of your body, this is a very good antioxidant, and it'll boost up energy levels. So please take ubiquinol every day and add it to your protocol. It's very important. NAD plus also boosts up your energy levels, but this also helps to boost up healing your DNA. Your DNA gets damaged, especially when you get older. That DNA damage accumulates and you have more DNA damage. It's harder to repair it. We have repair mechanisms for this DNA damage, but as we get older, it's harder to repair. You need supplementation to be able to supercharge that repair mechanism. So take NAD plus to increase your energy levels. NAD plus also helps with the repair mechanism for DNA, and it helps with neural health. It's synergistic with ubiquinol and C60. Please go to my store and take NAD plus every day. That's the end of the broadcast. Thank you for listening. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the anti-aging boxes, get the anti-Fauci boxes, get the skincare boxes, get the individual supplements if you want to buy them individually. It's up to you. You get a little bit of a discount if you buy an anti-aging box. And please make sure you subscribe to all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. You can be a paid member to my Patreon channel to help support my news coverage. You can also donate on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. On the homepage at the very bottom, you can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. I have thousands of videos for free to help you navigate through international affairs, finance. I tell you resistance points and support levels for the financial markets, so you can earn money that way. In addition, I tell you how to improve your health by slowing down aging and boosting up your immune system, right? And mitigating some of the problems you might have. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. And, oh, by the way, don't be a Biden.